Figma's interesting because there is a long pedigree of design system interactions. There's a long history of design systems using Figma as a destination for essentially modular approaches to design. All the hows and whys of what modular content looks like within the user journey from a content first standpoint. And once that exists, how do you get that together with modular design? So there's a lot of design systems. I think anybody using Figma is probably also have some sort of design system project in the works or running in their organizations. Design systems in general are taking a systematic way of seeing design for reusability and composability and instituting it within a governance framework, within a orchestration approach, often within a system of record, so that design set of tooling can be integrated to the way that folks are building their user experiences, their different UIs, using these common elements. What I'm going to talk about is how we get composable content into action inside of an enterprise and how we get that into relationship with design systems. So we're going to take a look at some of the barriers to composable content, why it's not happening today. And then we'll take a look at some of the ways around those barriers, and then the way that we can sort of funnel into a way to get started, and then what a life cycle of an implementation project kind of looks like. And then we'll also start looking at some tools, and specifically a template that we'll walk through that you can download if you'd like and use as a place to get started. For a long time within the structured content world, we've talked about the concepts behind content modeling. There's some really great panels we've done this last year with Nas and folks on Omnichannel X on content modeling. And there's some really, really good material that we published that others have published. Of course, Carrie Hain and Mike Atherton have a great book about it. There's other authors that have been addressing content modeling at some depth, and Michael in his blog certainly does as well. That's all wonderful, but the problem is we found that many organizations are doing grassroots work in order to get component-based content off the ground, and usually building a larger scale content model that's cross-functional is an unusual starting place. We have clients that have built those, and we've built some huge ones for more top-down engagements with transformation initiatives. But really, from a content design perspective, there are things to do to move the ball forward towards component-based content that is reusable. And the goal for this talk today is to make it as practical as possible to get started from a grassroots level. So let's talk about some of these barriers to composable content, to getting content structures into production. So one is this: there's no budget, there's no internal support. And so everybody's just, out there focused on a limited output format. There's another one there where it's get the website relaunched, or somebody's decided, hey, let's re-platform, So now we're re-platforming to a headless system, which is awesome, but nobody's done any of the architecture for the content structures. And so they're just kind of lifting and shifting the old stuff into this new platform that has an API. So it's old stuff, but exposed in a chunky way via API. So it's not actually reusable in the ways that Michael was talking about. So the other thing is that internal partners don't get it. Let's say you build a content model, or you build a basic set of content elements for reusing, for example, some common elements for an offers project, but then you don't have the interface folks working with the same kinds of heuristics in mind about how to structure those outputs, so you can get the design componentized, but that doesn't necessarily work with componentized. Or you can get content componentized, but it's not working with componentized design in an interoperable way. And then there's lack of tools. So how do we build these models, share them? How do we get these different elements into a system? The design system folks have sorted this out largely, but not us on the content side. So we're really interested in that. How do we advance the state of the art of what it is to integrate component content into design systems at a very practical level? So here's some ways to get past the barriers. Number one is, start small. So adding structure to a single project and a single team first. And we'll look at that when we look at the funnel as well. What is a good way to begin to narrow a scope that will allow you to demonstrate the value of component content in action? And then, two is internal marketing. Really, no matter how good the models, the component structure is, it has to be sold in to the other folks that are working on it. So there is kind of like an internal marketing effort that goes along with any of these initiatives. If you're going to build a spreadsheet, build a way to market the spreadsheet with folks. And that could be lunch and learns. It could be an email update. It could be a sponsored with your department doing a kind of organization-wide sort of tour and bringing the message around. A lot of different approaches to this. We've seen clients put up posters and other kinds of things as well and help build these internal marketing programs. And then the other thing is, if you don't have budget, start free and cheap. We used to really kind of talk about spreadsheets as passe in a way, that we want to move more towards object-oriented content modeling approaches. And we build tooling in that regard. But what we found is that we really need to just be able to start with something that everybody has, that's simple, as portable, and the good old spreadsheet is a way to do it. And then use that to move into plugins, especially things that plug into Figma, but you can also have things that plug into your content management system as well. So that way you can operationalize your content structures so that they become more visible to people. So they're abstract at the highest level, but they should take the form of artifacts. And that's really how they become visible. And so we'll talk about some of the artifacts and the ways that content models express themselves. And we're going to talk about tokenizing content models and specifically doing so in a way that allows them to be available kind of just to the people that need those particular parts of your model. So that way it's not just one big content model that you're asking people to absorb, but they can start to absorb just the pieces they need for their project, their part of the website, their channel that they're working with. And then it's, build support by sharing, start small and then share with others and then grow from there. I really liked this quote from a talk that Haley Hughes gave last year, Thinking Big and Small. So she said that there's periods in your career when no matter what you say, people just don't get anything related to to systems in general. They're just not going to get it. But there's going to be other times when you have incredible advocates who not only get systems, but they invest in you and your team and your efforts. So there is some peace in knowing that this is a cycle. And I like the zen of this quote. It's keep working to advance the state of the art. Know that there's going to be times that people support what you're doing and get it. There's going to be other times that they don't. And so you just kind of keep plugging away. All right. So let's look at this composable content focus funnel as a way to look at how to get started, where to begin. First of all, pick a content domain. So what is the overall domain that you want to operate within? So this could be a broad domain like post-sales support content or pre-sales marketing content to get people to conversion moments. It's really within that content performing functions for a given domain within those journeys or within the larger corpora of content at the enterprise. Choose one. And then within that, choose at least a content type. Sometimes pilots are fine with 2 or 3, but don't go crazy, because the wider your aperture, the harder it is to narrow everybody's attention through to completions, to production releases, or at least to releases into pilot stage. And so you want to get that narrow focus on something that is communicable easily. Then choose the views. What are the outputs? What are the ways that you want to represent the content? And then if you have a design system, get specific with, what design components. Are we working with the carousel? Or what are we working with? And then all the way down to defining a pilot, who's the team and how they're going to work on it. And then fade in an approach to working with composable content types that can be put into a pilot that you can expand, prove value, expand further, incorporate more participants. and then bring into production rollouts and iterate. And then from there, build up a dedicated function and engage more pilots that are ancillary until you're building a content system ultimately. So we talked about content models, but we want to decompose content models further. And so I'd like to introduce a concept called content tokens. In the design system world, there's something called design system tokens. And a design system token is basically a way to define a design dimension in a form that can be easily accessed for reuse. So these are transportable, in some cases, they're just CSS classes that are stored in config files. There's a lot of ways that design system tokens get stored and incorporated into code, but they're basically reusable. Definitions for standardized colors or typography or spaces or borders, cell padding and this kind of thing. And how forms get laid out and icons are used and grids and what the accessibility is. All of that is a way to componentize design. So content system tokens are ways to define different content dimensions in forms that can be easily accessed for reuse and orchestration. And anyone used to content modeling will notice that what we're doing with content system tokens is just decomposing the content model into parts that then can be reused as independent pieces. These are essentially everything from the content types within a domain, the elements within content types and the attributes, collections, which are groupings. For example, all the elements that are used in a promo carousel or all the elements used in a resource center or social media item. So all of those things can get put into an encapsulated form in the beginning in a spreadsheet, right? And that can be considered tokens, which are reusable parts of content that then have actual content associated with it. So to make that real, to make this make sense, we're going to talk about how these manifest. And then we're going to look at them in an example spreadsheet. So content tokens can manifest in a lot of different ways. One is in a content model spreadsheet. It could also be in a content modeling tool. We use one called Core Models. It can also be used in a CMS, content management system. Those are just the form fields that you have in your CMS, right? It's the schemas that run that CMS behind the scenes. So that is also a way that that content model in its full form manifests, but it might actually just be, separate subsets of the model, which are in different spaces. So all of that is then rendered to a channel. And those content tokens are actually, appearing in different places. The title is appearing here, and then the summary is appearing, and there's a caption appearing here. Those are all different tokens of content that are being reused, right? A component form of content that is tied back to a system, right? Which is ultimately the larger content model that is orchestrating the structured content in these different forms, including to the code, right? Whether that's XML or JSON or whatever, or CSS that is representing those elements of your content in code. So all of those are different places where content tokens materialize. The spreadsheet, right here, you've got, these are all different kinds of tokens: search, description, title, summary, caption. The content model tools, where you see it where they're mapped and you're describing them and connecting them with other standards like schema.org. And then you're mapping from your CMS to other systems. So whatever those systems are, they're all incorporating these same sort of tokens in different places, in different representations. Same thing with semantic coding and the channels. So let's look at what a template for content tokens definitions looks like. So this is a very simple spreadsheet. We've created this as a free download. And basically the idea for this template, it's an example of a way to take content types. In this case, we've got article, event, video, white paper, person, right? These are all types along with some various elements. And so all of that is now inside of a spreadsheet, and the spreadsheet's pretty easy to use. So you can take your, let's say, your catalog list or your article type, and then you can add in your description here. So this is cool because content designers can just easily plug in, sort of content from a content first approach into here without having anything actually built out. Or they can begin to take somebody's designed something inside of Figma and they can begin to start turning it into something that the data folks can use. So either way, content designers, whether they're starting with the presentation that somebody's mocked up and now they have to decompose it into a set of tokens, they can do that in the spreadsheet, or they can start like Michael is recommending with a content first approach and then build the journeys and build the content elements and then provide them in here. And then we'll show you how we can connect this into Figma. So whether either way you're starting, you can meet inside of this kind of spreadsheet and then have people edit it. And it's a Google Sheet. It's pretty easy then to collaborate on it and whatnot, and to create relationships between different types. We do this in a fancy tool called Core Models, but you can also just do it in a spreadsheet. And these things all can include things like assets like display images and whatnot. And if you'd like to take a look at the spreadsheet, just take a look at simplea.com. We've got that there for download. And then that can be plugged into Figma. So let's talk about what that would look like. Once you've got your content tokens and they're defined and you're ready to start reusing your content, now you want to be able to get it actually working inside with the rest of your design tools. So here, we're going to just take a look really briefly at this plugin. The plugin is free for use with the spreadsheets, and you've got Contentful or another system. There's a way to license it for enterprise, but for using it with the spreadsheet and just getting anything you need to going, you can drag in your elements directly from your spreadsheet and in your design. So just like the component-based designers have design systems with these little system trays where they're able to pull in a carousel, a widget, a promo box, or whatever, now you can drag and drop straight out of your spreadsheet, but in Figma, all of your structured content components. So you can drag your actual live content item examples, or you can do the fields only, for example, and just bring in the field names like title and headline and design in this abstract way and show people, here's how this stuff is reused. And what's cool about it is once it's tied back to the data source on refresh, it'll update your Figma file. So that way you can do lots of different variations of your content and you can show you can build one prototype and then show lots of different variations of the content. And you can start working towards composable content in a very practical way. So this is one of the ways we're really working to get these component-based content approaches made practical. So you can get started pretty easily here by downloading the template spreadsheet, syncing it to real content for Figma, playing around with it. It's free to use forever for both of these with a spreadsheet. So it's a good thing for content designers who are wanting to grassroots begin the conversation about structured content and what content tokens are and how that can reuse towards the systems and build towards really truly more interoperable content models. We're a big fan of the bigger picture, which is putting together content services organizations with dedicated content engineer and content operations and content strategy folks. And we've done that with some large organizations and gotten these running and done transformation work. But we found that that's like a very small percentage of the market. The largest percentage of the market are people who are working grassroots up on projects. And so we really want to make sure that we're able to bring everybody towards more composable content technologies. And it's happening slowly, but surely it's happening. In terms of trends, there really is a lot more tools that support component-based authoring. A lot of component content management systems, but also digital asset management, product information management. A lot of CMSs have APIs now. The whole headless revolution has been very successful, and the Mock Alliance has moved a lot of architectures towards composability. So there is a lot of tooling out there that supports exactly what Michael and I have been talking about today. The industry have talked about for a long time, but now the tools support it. And as we move more towards AI and generative systems, we believe that the need for structure is actually going to be even greater than ever before. And so that that we're going to need to be able to provide these structures to the AIs. And we'll need to be able to do that in a way that's reusable and object-oriented. And so the work you're doing now is laying the future groundwork for working with content and AI at a more scalable level. That's its own discussion, but just rest assured that this is in line with something that we believe is, and we've seen so far to be very, very durable, even in the advent of generative AI systems. We mentioned Carrie and Mike's book, Designing Connected Content. That's a great place to get started. Atomic Design has talked about the same thing in the design world for a long time, and the heuristics in this book are really good. And then there's Michael's blog, Story Needle, which is great. Check out the Mach Alliance if you're interested in architecture, microservices, API first, cloud native. This is all part of the trend towards composability that we're talking about. And composable systems is something Gartner and others have talked about in depth. They've got some material out there about the future of business as composable. And if you're interested in enterprise content models, there's something called the core content model. This is different. It's come to my attention. There's another system called the core model, which is a content planning tool. This is about enterprise grade content models that interoperate across groups and systems and teams and devices and platforms. When you kind of go into this sort of more advanced enterprise kind of conversation about modeling, that's the next step, is the core content model.